all born somewhere. Life has no limit. 250 babies are born every minute. 130 million are born every year. No matter who we are, we were all born somewhere. We're all born equal but with disparities. 26 million is the number total of world refugees, and half of them are children. And yet it seems crazy and hard to understand. You can be a Gen Z and live in a camp. You can be 17 and leave your home behind. Or you can be 16, connect with youth online. While some may spend their weekends expanding their knowledge, some others spend their weekdays dealing with power shortage. When all the knowledge of the world is at your fingertip, you owe the world a favor. We need your leadership. UNICEF works to keep children alive, their basic right protected, they might feel safe and happy. 7 in 10 young people worldwide are digitally connected. What about the remaining 3? In an interconnected world, let's strive for inclusion. Let's make this global network a fact, not an illusion. Technology is power. That is nothing new. Let's make it a common good, not a privilege of the few. Let's accomplish this goal and help humankind. Let's build bridges, not walls, and leave no one behind. If you can help millions, that's your best currency. Tell me, how will you commit? Empowering refugee children through technology. What will be your role in it?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference. Our Excellency Ms. Daria Kiseleva, as the Secretary General of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference.
Our Excellency Ms. Joa Jedini Williams, as the Head of Global Communication Service.
Our Excellency Mr. Guilherme Canella, as the Chief Sections of Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists, UNESCO Communications and Information Sector.
Our Excellency Board of Secretary of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference.
Our Excellency the Board of Directors of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference.
And our beloved delegates of Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference that come from more than 58 countries around the world.
Wow! First of all, let's thank God who has given us His mercy and blessing, so we can attend this program without any problems, and we hope that we are always in the good health.
Yes, even though we are still in this pandemic situation, we should be confident to fight this with our creativity. So, Ari,
yes?
I cannot wait to say this, to say hello to all the delegates tonight. Are you guys ready to start this opening ceremony?
I think they are more than ready to start this opening ceremony, Melinda.
Okay, I agree with you, Ari. So, before the beginning of the whole session of this opening ceremony, let us introduce ourselves as a Master of Ceremonies. My name is Melinda.
And I'm Ari Fauzan, and we will accompany you for the opening ceremony of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021.
And before we jump to the conference tonight, we have something special for you delegates.
Yes, Melinda. Now we have a special cultural performance, and that is Selat Segari Dance from the Island of God, Bali, Indonesia by Dende Anjani Dance Group. Check this out.
Wow, I love that dance, Ari, and I think I would like to learn that salad cigarette dance. So interesting.
It's so impressive, Melinda. Well, they're our beloved delegates. Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021 is the 6th edition of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference. And in this conference is organized by the International Global Network, the platform that focuses on youth capacity development with a mission to connecting young leaders around the world.
Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021 is also supported by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia.
Wow, I cannot wait to start this conference, Melinda.
Yes, Ari. And this edition, our green theme is Accelerate Social Stability Amongst the Sovereign Nations. And this event is starting from today, 28 to 31 May 2021.
Yes, they're our beloved delegates. During the opening ceremony, kindly turn on your camera and mute your audio. You also can share your story on your Instagram and tag us on
At International
MUN. Once again, at International MUN. Alright, Melinda, what's next?
Yes, we are going to say hello to all delegates here to burn your spirit tonight.
Alright.
So, starting from delegates from Indonesia, please raise your hand.
Hello, delegates from Indonesia.
What's next, Ari?
I want to see your best smile, delegates from Cambodia.
Hello, delegates from Cambodia. And please raise your hand, delegates from Spain. Hello, delegates from Spain.
Another smile that we want to see tonight. Hello, delegates from South Africa.
Woo, hello. And please show your pose, delegates from the Philippines.
Mabuhay, Philippines.
So hello to all delegates that we cannot mention your country one by one, but we hope all of you will always be in a good condition. Stay safe and good luck for this conference.
They're our beloved delegates. It's such an honor for us can be here tonight and lead this prestigious conference, the second edition of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations, which held virtually and attended by more than 800 delegates from 58 countries around the world and connected to 10 councils.
I also feel your excitement, Ari, for this conference. So, what do we have next?
And here are the series of the activities for the opening ceremony of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021.
First, opening remarks by the Secretary General.
Keynote speech session by Ms. Jong-Ah Janini William as the Head of Global Communications Office.
The Grand Symposium with two inspirational speakers. First, we have Ms. Daria Kiseleva as the Secretary General of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference.
And the second speaker, we have Mr. Guilherme Canela as the Chief Sections of Freedom of Expression, Safety of Journalists, UNESCO Communications and Information Sector.
And the next agenda, we will have introduction of Council and Board of Directors.
And general information about the conference.
And before we jump more to the opening ceremony and to the opening remarks of the Secretary General, we have another something special to our beloved delegates. So tell us, Ari.
Yes, that is the official video from the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia. Check this out.
No one would have expected 2020 to go the way that it did. Out of nowhere, the world just closed its doors.
We made it to Bali.
And although it's been a year that's physically kept us from our friends and loved ones, it's been a year that has brought us together and made us stronger in many other ways. And now, as we start a new year, we slowly begin to open our doors once again to new people, new places, and to new adventures.
What a wonderful video, dear our beloved delegates. So, to begin the first agenda, we would like to invite Ms. Daria Kiseleva as the Secretary General of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference to deliver her remarks. To Ms. Daria Kiseleva, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ari and Melinda. Distinguished delegates, returning and new, honorable guest speakers, dearest board of directors, and dearest IGN colleagues. I would like to begin my speech by thanking each and everyone involved in the organization of this large-scale event, so important at this particular moment. So important for several reasons. First, given the sets of restrictions and social distancing measures, it is crucial today to keep the international civil society alive and vibrant. It is more important now than ever to keep ourselves informed about what is going on or the current political, economical, and scientific global developments, and also to be able to address and discuss them in a safe space where voices from every country can be heard. Secondly, with the ongoing health and climate challenges, the eyes of the international community are on the new generation. Your generation, our generation. Therefore, providing a platform for the youth online to gather and debate such pressing issues, learn from each other, and get informed about the current state of the world is just priceless. And this is why I believe the work of IGN is so important and why I feel honored to contribute to AYIMUN 2021. The theme for this year's conference is Accelerate Social Stability Amongst Sovereign States. When we talk about social stability, we talk about the degree to which a society and its institutions remain predictable and reliable. We all need predictability and reliability in our lives, and especially when it comes to our political institutions and our social structures, because it allows us to plan and conduct our daily affairs and just live our lives without major disruptions. In fact, it is common to assume that stability is one of the primary goals for a society. Yet, social stability is far from being granted, solid, nor permanent in every part of the world. Whether in politics, justice systems, economic structures, or cultural and religious spheres, breaches can be found, breaches that could lead to major social unrest if they are not taken care of rapidly by competent, empathetic, and resourceful people. These people are the next change makers, the leaders of the world, and the leaders that we desperately need. People who are interested in finding actual, concrete, and efficient solutions rather than running after personal gain. Those are people that would rather work behind the scenes to build a better future than attracting the spotlight on them and misusing it. These are the people who value peace, integrity, equality, and human rights above any form of material reward or social status. If you want to be part of these people, your journey starts now. There is no probation period, no certificate, and no degree that can ever make you a change maker. This is the work of a lifetime. This is the sum of all your choices and all your decisions. All the decisions you take from now on. This is the sum of all the things you will choose to say and all the times you will decide to remain silent. This is the sum of every instances where you will stand up for justice, for peace, for your beliefs, and all the moments you will choose to ignore the problem. You don't bring positive change overnight. And this world will change only if we play our part in it by choosing responsibility over indifference. So consider this conference as your first step, your first mission, your first opportunity to start uncomfortable and challenging conversations, to do some thorough research, to be a listener. Consider it your opportunity to learn and get educated about what is going on in the world, what is going on at your neighbors, and what is going on inside your own home. Before taking any great action, one must think, and before thinking, one must listen and get informed. This is your opportunity to listen and get informed. Be patient, stay humble, and be open to new ideas and beliefs different from your own. I sincerely hope that you will get the most out of this Model UN conference and that it will be a life-changing experience, just like it has been for so many of us. Thank you so much for joining our adventure and have an amazing time at AYIMUN 2021. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ms. Daria Kisileva, for your welcoming speech tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, now we step to the next agenda, and that is the keynote speech sessions, which will be delivered by Ms. Jong-Ah Jadini Williams as the Head of Global Communications Office. To Ms. Jong-Ah Jadini Williams, the spotlight is yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you to all the organizers and, of course, the Secretary General for that very inspiring introduction to today's sessions. I am the head of the Global Communication Service for the UN Refugee Agency, and I've been working with UNHCR for 25 years or so, but I've been working in the refugee sector, in the humanitarian sector since 1994. Like many of you, as a student, I was very engaged on the world around me and some of the inequities, some of the injustices that I wanted to work to try to improve and change. And that's how I started with my interest in humanitarian affairs. For my first job in 1994, I traveled to Bosnia during the war. And from the first day that I arrived there, I knew from that moment that this is what I would be spending my entire life on. And it's a career, it's a vocation, it's a calling that is both inspiring and incredibly satisfying, while also being incredibly difficult and challenging. I would say today in 2021, we are seeing so many different complications and complex challenges that we couldn't have dreamt of. I mean, even just over a year ago, we wouldn't have imagined the scale of the global pandemic that has essentially shut down most of the world. What it has not shut down is conflict, violence, and displacement. And in the past year, we've seen as much displacement and violence as we have in previous years. So while most of us are working from home, as I am today, or are working either remotely from different countries than we normally would be, studying online, maybe back home instead of at university, or in our various locations, I think, unfortunately, the millions and millions of people who've had to flee their homes, they are not seeing any kind of slowdown in the type of tragedies and the type of difficulties that they're facing. Around the world today, and I'm going to try to share my screen if I don't know if it's allowed or not. I'm not saying that it's available, so I will just continue talking, and perhaps I'll share a few photos after with the presenters who can share them with you. Around the world today, there are approximately 80 million people who've been forced to flee. I believe that when you have numbers that are so big, they almost take on a nameless presence. So when I say 80 million people, it just becomes this giant block that doesn't speak to the truth. We're talking about 80 million individuals, mothers, students, dancers, bakers, grandparents, children, infants. These are the people that have been forced to flee. And the majority of them are simply running because they have absolutely no choice. Nobody chooses to become a refugee. Nobody chooses to become displaced within their own countries. They flee because of conflict, persecution, violence, and often of the fear of what may happen because they have seen challenges, they've seen discrimination, they've seen xenophobia. And so the people that we're talking about are just pretty much the same as all of us. They're looking for safety, they're looking for access to health, to education for the children. They're looking to be able to work freely, to get married, and hopefully when they are older, to be able to have a peaceful golden period before they pass away. But what we're looking at now is a situation where 80 million people around the world don't have even that. Some don't even have access to a birth certificate. That sounds like it's just a piece of paper, but that alone will allow you to go to school, to be admitted to a hospital if you need medical attention, to get married, to get a job, and even to have your death recognized with a death certificate. These are people who deserve just as much freedom, access, employment, opportunity, and happiness as anybody else. And so that's why the work of the UN Refugee Agency is critical, because right now what we're looking at is a global environment where the word refugee has become weaponized. The idea of migration has become politicized. So I'm very happy to be speaking with all of you today because I know that you are committed.
All right. Hello, Miss Jong-ah. Are we still connected?
Yes, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Please continue, Miss.
Okay. I think that, let me just try stopping my camera and then restarting it and seeing if that works.
All right.
Can you see me again?
Yes, of course.
I think what's also important to note is that many around the world are worried that mass migration is out of control, and that's simply not the case. The majority of people who flee, 85% of them, are fleeing in mainly neighboring countries and those countries that are developing or poor. So it is not that it really is the case where we as the world needs to collectively share responsibility for those who are forced to flee. 40% of those who are forced to flee are children. Now, if you think about what that means, let's take, for example, either the children that were forced out of Syria or Myanmar. We're looking at up to 5-10 years with no standardized education. And what does this mean for a future, for the opportunity to rebuild and develop their countries once they are able to return, hopefully during a more peaceful, calm time? We're also looking at the situation where the majority of those people who are forced to flee come from just 5 countries around the world. Obviously, there's the well-known conflicts in Syria and in Venezuela, but there's also Afghanistan, South Sudan, Myanmar that are still creating more refugees as the situations in all those countries continue to flare up and escalate again and again. I've been lucky enough to work with UNHCR for almost my entire adult life. And I have to say that the reason that it means so much to me to work for the UN and to work for UNHCR is because the people, the hundreds and hundreds of refugees, internally displaced people, stateless people that I've met have been incredibly inspiring to me. That in the face of facing and surviving some of the most traumatic, tragic situations you can imagine, there's still such a strong sense of hope. There's such a sense of wanting to rebuild. to have the opportunities that many of us take for granted. There have been many times when I've gone to these places and I worked in war zones or conflict zones for about 15 years of my career, where I would go into the homes of refugees who have so little. I mean, really, if you think about it, most people, they become refugees almost in an instant, and they have no time to even grab anything. Some go even without any documentation, passports, just the clothes on their back, and trying to grab their children if they're able to. And yet I can honestly say that there hasn't been one single household that I visited where these families have not offered to share their food, their coffee, their space with me. They've opened themselves and told me all of the things that not only that they've endured, but all of the hopes that they have for their children, for the next generation, for rebuilding their countries. It's that kind of bravery and humanity that really gives me the motivation and the strength to just keep going. Before I finish my remarks, I'll just share the story of two examples of the kind of fortitude and the kind of universal humanity that I hope will stay with you and will also inspire you as you go throughout the following sessions. I was in Bangladesh in 2017 at the beginning of the outflow of Rohingya refugees from Myanmar. And I remember that there was it was about over 3 days when I would be walking and trying to talk to as many people as I could and find out what had happened to them and try to find out and assess what exactly the most pressing needs were. Without a doubt, every single family I spoke to first mentioned education. For them, that was the most important thing. And I noticed on the afternoon of the first day that there was this young girl who was following me around the camps in Kudapalam. She reminded me a lot of my daughter, actually, and it turned out that later when I spoke to her that she was the same age as my daughter. Her name was Rina, and she was at that time 9 years old. And she and her mother and her infant sister had walked over 10 days through the jungles, through the rice paddies to reach safety in Bangladesh. She had this beautiful, shy smile. And when I asked her, you know, where her mother was, and she took me to husband and father had been killed in front of them quite brutally. Their grandparents had been left behind because they were too frail and unhealthy to travel. And this young family of 3 had made that trek for 10 days, sleeping out in the open with hardly any food and water. And yet Rina was smiling. And I asked her, you can't stop smiling today. Are you feeling safe? Is that why you're smiling? And she said, yes, we feel safe, but today I registered to start school. And it's the first time that I'm going to be able to go to school in over 3.5 years. She was so excited about the prospect of going to school that she couldn't help but smile despite everything that had happened. And I can genuinely say Irina stuck with me. And every year at the start of the school year, as my daughter goes into her new class, I do think about Rina. I wonder how she's doing. I wonder if she's enjoying school. And I hope that at some point I'll be able to go back this year if the travel restrictions are lifted a bit and try to find her and see how she's doing now. I think that she really embodied for me the hope that exists even in the face of losing everything. She said that she wanted to become a doctor one day so that she could help others around her. And I firmly believe that it is this kind of universal spirit of finding that hope despite everything and working together and working hard towards it. So I do hope that you all will keep that core with you as you go through the next few days. And then the last thing that I'd like to share is that as we did in 4 years ago in Rio, this year for the Olympics, if the Olympics take place, there will be a refugee Olympic and Paralympic team. These are athletes who have trained. Many of the runners, for example, never trained with sneakers. They never had a track, and yet they have just founded it in themselves. Like they are athletes first. So they are runners and swimmers and judoists, and they happen to be displaced. They happen to be refugees. So I hope that while you're cheering for your own national teams, you'll also cheer for these amazing refugee and athletes and Paralympians and Olympians this summer. And with that, I will be happy to take any of your questions.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Jong-ah Janini Williams, for your inspirational speech for this conference.
What a warm opening speech from our beautiful and inspiring speaker, Ms. Jong-ah Janini Williams.
Yes, they're our beloved delegates. Now we step to the next agenda, and that is the Grand Symposium. What do we have in this Grand Symposium, Melinda?
Yeah, we have a lot of things, and we have two inspirational speakers.
Yes?
And we're talking about our grand theme, that
Alright.
is accelerate social stability among sovereign nations. And we believe that is one of the big issues that we are facing right now.
Yes, we know that today, as Ms. Jong-ah said before in her speech, our world is facing daunting challenges such as social instability, climate change, persistent poverty, entrenched inequalities, and many more. And I think one of the key solutions is empowered youths who want to take actions and make a change.
And I totally agree with you, Ari. So, based on United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, UNDESA, has stated that by 2030, the target date for the Sustainable Development Goals, the number of youth is projected to have grown by 7% to nearly 1.3 billion. Youth can be positive force for development when provided with the knowledge and opportunities they need to thrive.
Yes, Melinda, and I think young people, the next generation, should acquire the education skills needed to contribute creating a better world, and they need access to opportunities that can upgrade their skills and make them more ready to achieve their successful future.
Yes, Ari. And by joining this international conference like AYIMUN, of
Alright.
course, will be a good choice for it to improve youth, to improve youth skill and potential. So, Ari, I can't wait to start this grand symposium to know more knowledge from our two inspirational speakers.
Yes, Melinda.
How about you, delegates? Are you guys ready to hear a lot of things?
I think they are more than ready to start this Grand Symposium, Melinda.
So, for this grand symposium, we will have two inspirational speakers with their own background, that is international relations.
That is true. Let me introduce for the first speaker. We have Ms. Daria Kiseleva. Ms. Daria Kiseleva is pursuing a dual master's degree in international development and international security between Paris and Moscow. Currently, she is interning at the European Union delegation in Russia. She has discovered Model United Nations back in her first year of the university in Paris and has been involved for a while from the delegates and the secretariat. In between, she believes in the unmatched power of the Model United Nations to bring young people together and educate about the global issues.
Wow, very, very amazing journey of her. So Ari, it's time to invite the first speaker. Hello, Miss Daria. How are you tonight?
Hi, Melinda. I'm doing great, especially since you called me inspiring speaker. I don't know if I'm inspiring, but I'm a speaker.
No, but
No. Yes, that is true.
that's fact.
You should confident about that.
So are you ready to start this grand symposium, Miss Daria?
Of course, I'm truly excited.
Yes, we are also excited and so on fire to start this grand symposium. But before we begin, we would like to inform our beloved delegates that during this grand symposium, you can ask the speaker by using the chat box feature on Zoom, and we will read your questions after all the speech has done.
And kindly write your question on the chat box with your name, nationality, council, and to whom your question is going to. Of course, to Miss Daria right now. And then we will choose the best question to be answered.
To Ms. Daria Kiseleva, you may have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ari. So, dear delegates, as you probably know by now, the theme of this conference is social stability, accelerating social stability in sovereign nations, okay? And one of the different angles, one of the different aspects or areas where social stability can thrive is politics, all right? Politics influence immensely, the social, the political stability of a country. So today I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you, to use this platform to talk about the involvement of youth in politics, all right? Because I know all of you are young people, and I know all of you have some interest, at least for, international relations, international issues, or politics, or maybe something else. But all of you live in countries where there is a political system, all right? So it targets all of you. However, I know, and we know that whenever politics is brought in a conversation, most of the time it's brought up as a grown-up thing, something that only adults can talk about, something that is either too controversial or too confusing to understand. And for this reason, so many kids, so many young people stray away from educating themselves about politics or getting involved with politics in any way, all right? But politics can truly be really controversial, but it's something that will not go away anytime soon, right? Especially if you live in a political model where, democracy, where the political representatives are elected by the people. This is something that is here to stay, and this is something that involves each and every one of us. And political polarity can divide a lot of countries, a lot of societies, and this is why it becomes increasingly important that the youth across the nations, across the world, advocate for important political issues and become involved in any way that they can, in any way that we can. Because as youth, we are not only a core part of our society today, but also for the next generation to come. So we are the only ones responsible for the way the world will look tomorrow for our children. And it is high time for us to stand up for what we believe in and make our voices heard. But yet, a common statement that I can hear from many young people is that my vote will not mean anything, or what's the point? It doesn't affect me, or it doesn't affect the people that I love in any way. But that cannot be further from the truth, because youth does not only make up a relatively large fraction of the population, but we are also extremely powerful, all right? And if we all voted, we'll have the power to actually sway an election. And even not voted, but if we all get involved into politics, we have really the power to make our voices heard. And actually, before I begin to give you some different ways that you can get involved into politics, according to a census data in the United States, youth makes approximately 37% of the eligible voters, all right, which is a large share. But in developing countries, when the population is way younger than in the United States, youth takes even more percent from the eligible voters. All right. So in other words, there are various ways for youth to become involved and to make their voices heard, and actually to really change the outcome of either an election or either some, political measures or the political developments of your own country or even internationally. So what are the different things that youth can do? Well, first of all, educate yourselves and educate others. All right. So whether it is learning about candidates and political issues, it will make your involvement grow, all right, in politics, and it will also make the involvement of others grow. Okay, and information about candidate and the issue is often available either online or even in some other sources. And there is also a lot of information in the news articles that is available on political issues. So a simple Google search, can do the trick. However, be careful that when researching, be aware of all the biases that you can find and the different news outlets that you are using, all right? But the most important thing would be to educate yourself and others. But honestly, I think this is already what you're doing by attending this conference. So thank you very much for that. But yes, as I told in my opening remarks, before taking action, it's important to think, and before thinking, it is important to get informed. So I will highly encourage you to do that. And although this is the most obvious step, of course, there are some other steps that can be followed, such as having conversations with your friends and family, all right? So being involved in politics, it's about being educated on issues, but it's also about having conversations with those around you, and not only to spread your knowledge, but actually to hear the knowledge of other people and to challenge your own beliefs, all right? Because this is by challenging your own beliefs that you will actually either be a more firm believer of your ideas, or maybe that you can change your mind, change your beliefs, which is, by the way, completely natural thing to do. And yeah, the political landscape is extremely partisan, all right, nowadays. And this is why it is really important to be able to listen and understand other people's point of view that cannot be oversimplified, all right? So although today in a lot of countries, I know in France, so in Russia, even in the United States, the political landscape is very polarized, which means that most of the time, there are two sides, and each side is not really ready to be listening to the other side, and each side is really kind of staying in their own bubble, talking and debating only among themselves, and therefore it does not create any exchange, it does not create any change actually. And so that's why having conversation with your friends, with your family, with people you don't agree with, it's extremely important. And only by having a conversation about politics, you can already say that you are, starting to get involved in politics. So this is another important thing. And especially, before trying to change the society or to, be heard in the society, have your voice heard, maybe just try to have your voice heard at your family dinner, right? Because this is an amazing place, by the way, to start talking about politics. I know it can be very tense sometimes, but at your family dinner, there are people from many different generations, all right? There are people from, different genders. And this is really important to actually start by your own family nucleus to talk about politics, to maybe raise awareness to the older generations about some very progressive issues, and also to hear what they have to say, because they have the life experience behind them. So this is also an important thing that you can definitely learn from. All right, so educate yourself and have conversations. The third thing would D, join political clubs, whether it is at your school or in your community. All right, it doesn't have to be a political party, all right, although it can be, but it can just be, if you have a Model UN association in your school, that will be one of the best decisions ever to join this Model UN society. Or if you have a debate club, or even if you have a school newspaper where you talk about political topics, just join it, because there you can not only meet like-minded people, but also not like-minded people. And that's where really the exchange of ideas and the debate can happen. All right. So in a lot of schools, there are such clubs, but if they are not in your school, they should be probably in your community. There are also some communities online, some online political forums, forums where you can discuss different things, including politics. And I would really highly encourage you to do that because once again, this is by opening up to the world and to different opinions that you will be able to really build and shape your own. Finally, well, not finally, but another way that you can get involved in politics, and this is a bit more specific maybe from one country to another, but there is this thing that is called phone banking for a candidate, all right? So when there are, for example, political campaigns going on, not necessarily presidential campaigns, but it can be parliamentary or choosing your mayor of your town. There is often a platform where you can actually talk to people about your delegates. Actually, you can phone to people and explain them everything about your candidate or the candidate that you're supporting, or just making it clearer in their minds. What are the different outcomes of these elections? What do you have to take into account before voting, etc. So if you can do that, that's another great way to, because first, before telling people, you have to actually learn what you're going to tell them. Okay, so this is a great way to learn. This is a great way to also actually hear what average, normal, random people have to tell you and have to answer to your arguments, because maybe in your mind, I don't know, you have developed the best arguments to defend your political position, and you think this is just the best, and you don't understand why anyone else thinks differently. But there you are on the phone with a random guy who just tells you something that completely changes your whole argument, So it's always great to confront your own opinions with the other people's opinions, of course. And finally, and this is really the final point, what I would encourage you to do, not only because this is educational and informative, but also because it is very fun, it is volunteering for a political campaign, okay? I know it can sound out of reach, maybe for some of you, but actually it's not. This is really a myth that it's hard to volunteer for a political campaign. Actually, when there are elections going on, when the candidates are campaigning, they are in desperate need of young volunteers who have the energy, who have the time to help them, because there are thousands of things to do during political campaigns. So yes, you can just volunteer. And, of course, it's great to volunteer for a candidate that you fully support. But even if you haven't found such candidate yet, you could volunteer for a candidate that you partly support, but just, to get acquainted with what is it like to, work for a political campaign, talk to people engaged in politics, get involved yourself. This is just an amazing, opportunity. So actually, most of the time to volunteer, you can go on your candidate's website, and usually they have like all that type of offers on their own websites, or you can follow them on social media, and they probably will post about that on social media. So just so you know, this is another Actually, another great activity that you can do, for example, during the summer or somewhere, this is really, really fun, and it will you will learn a lot by doing that. So, all right, these 5 ways are just some of the many ways that you can become more involved, but I thought that those are the most accessible ways and the most cheap, I mean, free ways actually, because you don't have to pay for that. And yes, and youth are such an integral part of our society, and more so politics, that the more young people become involved, and the better. And I would just like to finish that little interlude, the little intervention, by telling you that when you're young, or actually when you're old, when you're any type of age, and when you decide to get involved in politics, a lot of people make the mistake to think that they will only get involved if they find a candidate that they support 100% and that they agree with on 100% on the issues. And that will be the only thing that can make them involved, because otherwise, all the other candidates, well, sometimes they don't agree with them, sometimes they're saying some things that sound very bad. So yeah, if you don't find any candidate that you agree with 100%, then you should not get involved in politics. And honestly, I think this is really a shame, because the thing in politics is that politicians, to have the most votes possible, to collect the most votes possible, their job is to actually, well, make sure that their programs and that their ideas appeal to the many, and to appeal to as many people as possible, which means that sometimes they have to adjust their programs, they have to adjust their ideas so that a lot of people get satisfied with it, which means that you will, in other words, never really find a candidate that you agree with on 100% of the issues, all right? But you should not aim for that. You should really aim for a candidate that you just consider better than the rest, all right? So most of the times, even the candidate that you think is the best one, they will not satisfy 100% of your needs, 100% of your criteria. But it's all right, because even if that candidate gets elected, and these are some issues that you don't agree with, you can always be part of the civil society and exert pressure on this candidate, which is actually what the role of a civil society is, and exert pressure for them to adjust their policies and make it more suitable for you. So in other words, do not wait for the perfect leader, the perfect politician. Just get involved. You're young, you have so many things to learn. I mean, I do too. I'm young too. We have so many things to learn. And yes, the most important thing right now, if you want to get involved, is to just do it. Just try it out. And just keep in mind that your political ideas right now will not be the same in 5 years or 10 years or 15 years. They will change, and this is inevitable, all right?
Well, hello, Miss Daria. Hello?
Involved, make mistakes, but at least get a say in the political future of your country and in the political future of you and of the people that you love. That's all for me. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Miss Daria, for your thoughtful and meaningful speech for our delegates. And we hope that we will get the knowledge well.
Yes, thank you so much for your incredible presentation, Miss Daria Kiseleva. Now we have a question and answer sessions, and we already choose 3 best questions. So, Melinda, what is the first question for Miss Daria?
All right, there you go, Miss Daria. The first question comes from Mahir, Bangladesh, and Albiona from Kosovo. The question is, How was your first MUN conference experience? And what are some tips you suggest when you did your first MUN speech? Please answer with Miss Daria.
Wow, that question, I love that question. That brings me back 5 or 6 years ago. And this is a great story to be told, honestly, because I think this is a story of hope. Because my first conference, just like a lot of people that I know, a lot of people I started MUN with, the first conference will not be the best one, okay? Especially for you as a delegate. And especially I started when, of course, there was no pandemic. I mean, 5 years ago, you remember, we were all happy and carefree. And all the conferences were taking place offline, of course. So my very first conference was the Paris International Model UN 2016, I believe. Yes. And yes, the conference was taking place in one of the biggest universities of Paris. It was very intimidating. There were a lot of experienced delegates. I was a newbie. And to be honest, I did not even know there was a procedure. I did not know what was the topic of the committee. I did not know anything. I joined just because I saw some pictures of it on Facebook, and I thought that that could be an interesting thing to attend. In other words, I think I was brave at that moment because I went there without knowing, really without knowing nothing. And I did not imagine that it could be so regulated with all the rules and everything. So yeah, basically I learned that there was a topic the night before, and I did not think it was very important for me to learn about the topic. Actually, I thought that I would be learning in the process, which I did, but it was a bit stressful, of course. And so, wait, I will just restart my camera. Can you see me well?
Can you turn
Okay.
on the camera, please?
Can you?
All right.
Okay,
Yes.
great.
We can see you right now.
Please
No
continue,
problem.
Miss.
So yeah, and then I joined, and it was a very stressful experience because at the beginning I felt like everyone knew what they were talking about, and I didn't. So at first I didn't speak. I listened to everyone else speaking, and I had in me that desire to speak, to take the floor, but I did not know exactly what to say, or at least I wasn't sure I would say the right thing. I wasn't sure it would be a smart thing to say. So I chose not to say anything for the first few committee sessions. And then I had really great chairs who encouraged me to speak. So then I spoke. And once I spoke once, I broke the ice, and it really encouraged me to speak more. And even if I didn't really know the topic well, I just spoke. And at the end of the day, I'm glad I did. It was an emotional roller coaster because it was really stressful, but at the end of the day, it was super satisfying for me to have done this thing, this unknown thing, completely out of my comfort zone. And actually, at the end, I also got to know the other delegates, and all the delegates that I thought were so experienced and knew what they were doing. And actually, they were beginners just like me. So all that to say, at the end of the day, when we're stressed and intimidated, we tend to perceive things bigger and more impressive than they really are. And today, yes, I'm really glad I did this first experience. And so, to answer the second part of the question, if I have some tips to speak, how to make your speeches, first of all, I would say just speak. Okay, just do it, because the regret that you will feel if you do not speak is way bigger and more painful to bear than, let's say, the embarrassment if you speak and you say something that is weird, you know? So yeah, I always follow this philosophy: better try it and look weird than not try it at all. Because if you haven't tried, well, you just have wasted an opportunity, you know, to extend your comfort zone. And we don't get that much opportunities like that in life. So as soon as you get one, just seize it and make full use of it. So yeah, my first advice would be just speak, try it. You're online, so worst thing that can happen. If you're embarrassed, you can just turn off your computer and forget about this conference. But yes, just try it out. And of course, the other tip, last but not least, would be to prepare. So do your research and prepare, because this is what will make you more confident about what you want to say, and this is what will encourage you to participate more, because if you're confident, you will participate. If you're not confident, if you're intimidated, you may be too scared to take the floor. So do your research, prepare, and most importantly, just do it. Like Nike, just do it. That will be my answer.
Thank you so much, Ms. Daria Kiseleva. I'm totally agree with you that the first conference is very memorable, right? And we got a lot of experience from there, and we can advance for our skills for the next conference. And remember that Ms. Daria Kiseleva tips is just do it for your conference.
And enjoy the process, Ari.
All right.
Don't worry about anything, just enjoy the process.
All right, now we jump to the next questions. So are you ready, Miss?
Of course.
Yes, the next question is from Layan Mahmoud from UNDP, the country of Jordan. The question is, what are your plans for the future, career-wise? And how do you plan on using your knowledge in international affairs to better the situation around the globe? You may have the floor.
This
to answer.
question sounds like my parents are asking me this question. So serious. Okay, so my plans career-wise. So currently, I'm actually about to graduate from my master's degree in a few weeks. So then I will be done with university. And I'm currently pursuing, as you know, an internship for 6 months here at the European Union delegation in Russia. So to be honest, my plans would be for the next year or so to really try out different things in the area of international relations, and just see for myself what I like the most, where I thrive the most, because it's actually very important to mention that, for example, for people who choose as their major international relations or political science or even any type of social science, when you make that choice, you think that it's pretty specific, right? International relations, it's not the same as politics. But actually, in the area of international relations, there are just so many different options, so many different career paths, so many different choices that I would say you really have to try a little bit of everything to be sure of what you want. So this is what I'm planning to do, but in the long run, and to improve the situation around the globe, I really hope to contribute to the work of an international organization, or going on the field, you know, just like Mrs. Jongha mentioned in her speech, going in places where people really need my expertise or anyone else's expertise, and yeah, trying to create change there. I know this is not a job that is easy, and this is also a job where you do not see the result right away, so it can be a bit frustrating, but yes, that will be my plan, working for an international organization. So yeah, that will be my answer.
Thank you so much, Miss Daria, for your very, very nice answer. So maybe delegates should know your passion first, and then doing a research again about the international organization maybe that you're interested. And I think that you may try to apply if there's any internship application or
the other opportunities.
yes, so that you know, and you will feel how the organization works on that.
So good luck.
Yes. All right. The last question, maybe, Miss Daria, right now. The last question will be, all right, from Shubhang Israya, India, and from the Council of UNEP. The question is, people start via debate, which turns into an aggressive war. No one really comes to a conclusion. How to teach others to listen first and then speak? Please, Miss Daria, your answer.
Well, this is a great question, but to be honest with you, Shreya, it's it not doesn't only happen in MUN, it happens everywhere, right? It happens in the playground where you're in kindergarten, when you're trying to have just a cooperation exercise where you're trying to play with someone and some people turn out to be aggressive and don't listen to you. It happens at school or at university where you're having debate with your classmates, and sometimes it's impossible because some people get aggressive as well. And unfortunately, it also happens on the international sphere when some leaders are trying to have a discussion, but some of them might get aggressive, and this is how wars are started sometimes. But honestly, well, I'll tailor my answer for MUN because this is my field of expertise. I'm not yet an expert in international negotiations of war. But for MUNs, I would say what will matter at the end of the day is your attitude and the arguments that you present. And when I say arguments, I mean how convincing you can sound to other delegates. And to sound convincing, that's why your attitude matters. If you become aggressive, if you become pissed, if you become frustrated, it will not give the other delegates the desire to listen to you, and it will make your speech less appealing. And if your speech looks less appealing, people might not listen or they might react in a certain way. So I would just say, just like in any type of conflict, try to remain calm, try to remain dedicated to what you believe in, and just try to present the arguments from A to Z, even though the other person is trying to interrupt you, because in life that may happen, especially if you work in certain career fields. But try to still say what you have to say. Do not get intimidated by the aggressiveness of other delegates or other speakers. Just be confident, and yeah, at the end of the day, you cannot control the other persons. The only person you can control is yourself. So for that, I would say just stay true to you, speak your truth. And if what you're saying is something you truly believe in, then no matter your opponent, no matter the aggressiveness of your opponent, you will always end up conveying the message you want to convey. So that will be my answer.
Thank you so much, Miss Daria. So maybe delegates, you have to say what you have to say, be confident with what you have to say, and maybe try to look at things from many perspectives to look for another answer also.
And don't forget to speak for the truth and by the research.
Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Daria Kiselefa, for your time for this grand symposium.
See you next time, Miss Daria. All right, move to the second speaker, Ari.
Yes?
We have Mr. Guilherme Canela here tonight. And I will read the journey of Mr. Guilherme Canela. He's really amazing. Mr. Guilherme Canela holds the position of Chief of the Section of Freedom of Expression and Safety of Journalists at UNESCO headquarters in Paris. For 8 years, he held the position of Communication and Information Regional Advisor for Latin America and the Caribbean at UNESCO Montevideo office. During those years, he performed as regional coordinator of the UNESCO Initiative for the Promotion of Democracy and Freedom of Expression in Judicial System in Latin America. He was also the secretary of the Regional Committee of the UNESCO Memory of the World Program for Latin America and the Caribbean, and focal point of the organization for issues related to the safety of journalists. He has a BA in International Relations from the University of Brasilia, or UNB, and a master's degree on political science from the University of Sao Paulo.
So, Melinda, it's time for us to invite Mr. Guilherme. How are you tonight, sir?
Hello, Mr.
Hello, good evening for you. I'm actually in Paris, so for me it's still almost beginning of afternoon, but it's a pleasure to join you.
Sorry, sir. Can you check your audio? Because we cannot hear you right now.
So many young people interested in the United Nations system. Madam Secretary General, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's a pleasure to be here in this discussion prior to your United Nations model. Before I speak about the topic that I was invited to, let me just share with you an anecdote. Many years ago, I won't say how many, I was, as you heard in my bio, a student of international relations. And back there, I also helped to organize one of those UN models. So you can see that some of the people persevere and then they become international civil servants, as it is my case now in here in the Secretariat of UNESCO headquarters in Paris. So I was particularly surprised when I received the invitation and very glad to see that you consider the issue of safety of journalists as one of the elements for your discussions. I've been invited for different reasons for connected with UN models. It's not very common that this issue is included in the discussions. And I can understand why. It's a very complex issue and it's a very sensitive one. I commend you for the decision because this is precisely the kind of issues that would help you to a real exercise of international diplomacy. Because discussing the easy issues, the ones that there are consensus among the member states of the United Nations system, is the easy part of the job. The difficult one is precisely discussing the ones that are particularly relevant for democracy, human rights, and development, but at the same time are controversial issues that the consensus are not easily reached. So I guess that you will have an interesting job ahead of you during your program. So the freedom of expression and the connecting elements, safety of journalists that is protected by press freedom or access to information, they are in the very heart of the construction of the United Nations system and ideals and principles. If you look on the very first General Assembly, and you look into the text that was approved there, you will see that in some point of that text, something like the right to information is in the very foundation of the United Nations system. Then obviously a few years later in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you will have the Article 19 spelling out what are the founding mothers and fathers of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights thought about these rights. And you'll see that those men and women, they were really avant-garde because you will see that they mentioned the freedom of expression is a right to everyone. It's not only about journalists, it's about every individual, regardless of frontiers. So it was very interesting at that moment in 1948, they really mentioned a very broad definition of freedom of expression. And this, if you even look to the challenges we have today with the new technologies, the way it was drafted back there is still very much valid. Throughout these years, the different conventions and treaties and resolutions only reinforced the right to freedom of expression in general and the safety of journalists in particular. So later on, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 19 and 20 as well, reinforcing these rights, and then subsequent resolutions of the Security Council, of the Human Rights Council, of obviously the UNESCO General Assembly, but then also underlying underline this particular element. But even when you look to specific conventions, if you look, for instance, in the UN Convention on the Right of the Child or on the UN Convention for People with Disability, you will find the specific elements on freedom of expression. And why this is relevant and is very much connected with your main issue of social cohesion, etc. It's because freedom of expression is a cross-cutting right. It's a right in itself, but it's also a right that is fundamental to protect other rights. And that's why freedom of expression, and then again, its correlated elements such as safety of journalists, have such a special protection in the international environment. If you look into the jurisprudence of the International Human Rights Courts, you will see how much throughout history, the judges that are interpreting the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the ICCPR, they again and again underlined the special protection that freedom of expression has. And one of the reasons of this special protection is precisely because this right is so relevant to protect other rights. Aside of that, freedom of expression has a double nature. It is an individual right. So when a drug dealer kills a journalist somewhere, obviously it's in the most crude way, censoring and affecting the freedom of expression of these particular journalists. But aside that, it's killing the freedom of expression of that entire community. All those people that were benefiting from the investigations, from the access to information provided by these journalists, have also their rights to freedom of expression and access to information affected by this cruelty of killing a journalist. So again, it's very important for you to have this conscious, how cross-cutting and transversal the freedom of expression, access to information, and safety of journalists is in the UN human rights agenda, and we'll speak a little bit about that even in other areas. So this is first point, the international standards, the principles that are related to these rights. The second element is where we are. We have advanced a lot if we compare with a few decades ago. We have advanced normatively speaking. We have advanced in the symbolic multilateral protection of those rights. We have advanced in national protection of those rights, but there are still lots of challenges to be overcome. In the most, let's say, horrific figures, since 2006, UNESCO have condemned 1,250 killings of journalists. So it's a lot. I mean, people that were killed for simply doing their job. Journalists that were killed, and people have some imagination that these journalists killed are journalists covering war zones, which is also true. But most of those journalists killed are journalists covering their local areas, are journalists covering corruption, are journalists covering human rights violations, are journalists reporting on environmental challenges, and they are still killed for doing their job. So that's why the United Nations system 10 years ago in 2012 decided under the leadership of UNESCO to enact and to start implementing what is called the UN Plan of Action on Safety of Journalists and the Issue of Impunity. This UN Plan of Action was endorsed by all the chiefs of all agencies, funds, and programs of the United Nations system, and since then has been implemented, trying to stimulate national and regional policies in what we call the agenda of the 3 Ps: prevention, prosecution, and protection of journalists. So obviously it's cheaper in any area if we can stimulate prevention policies, if we try to avoid the problem. But sometimes this is not possible. So then we need to create mechanisms to protect journalists that are threatened, for instance. And different countries have enacted this kind of mechanism. That's what's so-called protection mechanisms for journalists. But in many, many cases, as you saw, and I just mentioned, more than 1,000, journalists actually suffer violence, not only killings, that is, I said, is the most crude form of violence, but they suffer kidnappings, arbitrary detentions, online harassment, particularly women journalists. And so then we need the third P. We need prosecution. We need the judicial system to prosecute those crimes. And this is absolutely vital to cease the cycle of violence. Because when impunity is high, this is an open invitation for more violence. And unfortunately, in this area, the impunity rates are extremely high. Out of 10 killings condemned by UNESCO Director General, in only one there is a judicial decision regarding this murder. And so you can see that 9 cases remain without justice. So this obviously offer, as I said, an open invitation for more violence for the perpetrators of those crimes. This is my second point. Know where we are. We are in a situation where we still have a robust violence against journalists, but we also have interesting solutions on the table, and those solutions they are organized under the umbrella of this UN Plan of Action on Safety of Journalists and Issue of Impunity. Particularly connecting with the topic of your model this year, as I said, the freedom of expression, and in this case, press freedom, it's a right that helps to enable other rights. So when you look in the 2030 agenda, what are the 3 pillars of that call for humanity? They are democracy, they are development, sustainable development, and they are human rights protection and promotion. And when the member states in 2015 decided to include in the SDG 1610 fundamental freedoms, and particularly safety of journalism and access to information, they were actually sending this message that we need to protect journalists, we need to guarantee access to information, because these elements are absolutely fundamental to achieve the other 16 goals in the agenda. So if a mother or a father that are claiming for better education for their kids, they are forbidden to speak, they won't be able to achieve the right to education. So it's obviously when they are demanding more education, what they have in their minds is the right to education. They don't even realize that they are only being possible to demand this right because previously they have the right to freedom of expression, or they have journalists investigating what is going on with the money that should allegedly go to the school system, etc. So this is very important. The freedom of expression as helping the development agenda, the consolidation of democracies, and the rest of the human rights agenda. Finally, a message for you as future international civil servants or future journalists, etc. These year's UNESCO Guillermo Cano World Press Freedom Prize was awarded to a very brave woman, a Filipino journalist called Maria Ressa. I strongly encourage you to, if you don't know, to read about her history, and also to try to find her acceptance speech during the last World Press Freedom Day that was celebrated in Namibia, May the 3rd. And it's very interesting to see the passion of Maria regarding the importance of journalism for all these things that I just mentioned to you. Even with all the challenges she's facing, challenges in many areas that are putting her safety at risk, she built her entire speech around hope. Hope for a better world, hope that journalism can actually make things better. I also try to transmit here this same hope to you. Challenges are enormous. All the different areas that are under the mandate of United Nations are facing gigantic challenges. Reduction of poverty, protection and promotion of human rights, trying to cope with the gigantic challenge of climate change, or with the pandemic and the building back better, or any sort of protection of minority groups, etc. But we can't lose hope. What the multilateral system have built in these last 75 years, it's not a minor achievement for mankind, for humankind. We need to keep betting in this system, keeping betting in the idea that this dialogue among nations is absolutely fundamental to achieve our goals without using violence for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your inspiring speech, Mr. Guilherme Canela. We hope that we can learn a lot of things from your speech.
All right, and thank you so much for your inspirational presentation, Mr. Guilherme. Now we have a question and answer sessions, and we already choose 3 best questions. And for the first questions, yes. Are you ready, sir? All right, we're still waiting for the first questions. I cannot wait for this moment, Melinda.
Yeah, I think the committee also difficult to choose the best question to show tonight.
Yes, for the first question is from Ayushi Rai from India. The question is, as we all know, speaking the right thing can change the world, so as speaking wrong does, therefore can you please give insight about how can we as youth use our voice to make our world a better place? So for Mr. Guilherme, you may have the floor.
Yeah, sure. I mean, this is a very good question. You need to first let me maybe before answering that, to just make a small remark on the actual nature of the question, speaking the right or speaking the wrong. Obviously, objectively speaking, there is an immense challenge to counter disinformation and misinformation that is really a problematic element for for the current challenges that the world is facing. But we also need to be careful in framing things as right and wrong, because this is precisely how authoritarian governments try to reduce freedom of expression, as labeling things that they don't agree as wrong and labeling the things they do agree as the right ones. So the essential element here is about pluralism and diversity. And that's how we build better societies. Democracies are not about consensus. Democracies are about respecting the dissent voices and then trying to learn from them. Obviously, there are limits to freedom of expression, but those limits are very well delimited by international standards. So, for instance, hate speech that leads to violence, etc. But we need to be very careful in not following on the pitfall of labeling things as right and wrong, and avoiding what we don't agree. And maybe what we don't agree is the right thing to do. So that's the beauty of freedom of expression, but also the challenge of freedom of expression. That said, historically, you guys, young people, were essential for changes. So, and these changes start with speech, start with communications. So we strongly encourage you to put your voice out there. We strongly encourage you to engage with your environment, with your context, as people like Greta is doing, or Malala did, or is still doing. And these people have managed to change a lot. And they started exactly where you are. So it's possible. And I hope you can follow their passes as well.
Thank you, sir, for your answer. So maybe delegates, you can choose your own inspirational person like Malala,
Yes.
the one who inspiring us with her human rights things and with everything that she has done for the world. All right, sir, we have the second question now. There you go. It's come from Arnel B. Anonuvo Jr. from UNICEF Council and from the Philippines. The question is, I loved journalism when I was a kid. This is my dream job. My question is, how do we see a novel journalist who works for the nation's sustainability? So, sir, you may have the floor.
I'm not sure if I entirely understood the question, but as I was saying that the inputs that are needed to guarantee sustainable development in every nation are a complex puzzle. Many variables need to be in place if we want to have those three things that are under the umbrella of the 2030 agenda: consolidated democracies, protection and promotion of human rights, and sustainable development. But one of those things is what we call good governance. We need to be able to implement better policies in all different areas. And one key element for implementing good policies is if we can guarantee a very high level of accountability of the powerful actors that are in charge of implementing those policies. We don't have good policies where we don't have good accountability. And journalists are absolutely an essential element of the accountability machinery, what we call the checks and balances systems of our democracies. So journalists are absolutely essential in a free journalism to actually try to offer context to these public policies decisions. They are actually essential to address the questions that are disturbing questions. Journalists are there to do exactly that, to ask the questions that maybe won't be the questions that the governmental officials would like to hear. But this is very important to diminish the asymmetries of information, to get the public closer, the citizens closer to the actual principles that they voted for during elections. So sustainability is how we guarantee in the long run the implementation of quality public policies. And as I said, for doing that, we need to have more transparency and more accountability. And for having more transparency and more accountability, we need to have an independent, free and plural press and the news media and journalism.
Thank you so much, sir, for your great answer. Now we jump to the next question, and it's come from Philippines again, from Leon and from the Council of SPECPOL. The question is, how are the specific SDGs will create an impact to the development of journalism in the future? So you may have the floor.
Thank
for
you.
the answer.
That's a very good question. If you read with attention the SDG 16, that is the SDG for the promotion of peaceful societies and institutions and quality institutions, you will see a series of connections with the idea of free journalism and also access to information. So this SDG, for instance, in the SDG 16.3, is underlining the importance of rule of law. If I'm not mistaken, in the SDG 16.7, it's underlining the importance of citizens' participation. Another moment of the SDG 16 targets, it's underlining the importance of transparency, of fighting corruption, of fighting money laundering, of increasing the quality of public services. So all those different things, rule of law, public participation, fighting corruption, increasing transparency, they are very much connected with the idea of a free, independent, and plural journalism and the broader policy of access to information. So, someone told once that a free country is based on two important things: rule of law and freedom of expression. When one of those two things are out of the equation, we have a problem for democracy. So this is very much connected with the idea of independent judges and independent journalists. They do perform a fundamental role in protecting rights and shedding light to the problems we face, and therefore the path to find the solutions for that. So and we have numerous examples of how journalistic investigations, they have helped to bring change to, for instance, policies related to fighting domestic violence, or to policies related to the health system, or policies related to the defense system of a particular country. I could tell you here examples of it, and examples on how investigative journalism has shed light to important areas that are very much related to the SDGs agenda.
Thank you, sir, for your great answer. So, sir, before we close this great symposium, we would like to hear once again your closing statement. So the delegates, all of us, will know how this platform or this conference can help our delegates' future. Please, sir.
With great pleasure. As I said, I think these models for like simulating what actually happened in the United Nations system, and particularly the United Nations General Assembly, it's a great opportunity for all of you to dedicate precious time to think about the problems we are facing everywhere today. Freedom of expression is just one of the many challenges that the international community is genuinely trying to tackle and to solve. These are correlated to other big challenges, such as I mentioned, fighting disinformation or misinformation, or trying to fight hate speech, or how all of this is connected to even bigger challenges under the agenda of development, human rights, and democracies. So I do wish you these coming days this enlightenment to look into those challenges and try to think about solutions, because this is all about it. We need to have the necessary hope and optimism to assess the context, but not stop there. We need to actually try to figure out how we can move to a better stage, bearing in mind that any discussions under the umbrella of United Nations have as a fundamental element the Human Rights Declaration of 1948. Everything you need to discuss, it's open and free for diversity, for contradictory discussions, for disagreement, as long as you are fully aligned with those rights that we all agreed as humanity. Thank you so much for your invitation, and please keep counting on UNESCO for future engagements like that.
I'm totally agree with you that this conference is a great opportunity for us, the youth leader, to advance our skills. And thank you so much, sir, for your time to share your knowledge and experience for this grand symposium.
And dear our beloved delegates, we have another something special for you. Tell us, please, Ari.
Yes, that is the special video from the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia. Check this out.
This is my story of Bali and Flores. Now I can't say everything in a few minutes, but
but I hope I can take you along my journey so that one day you make it for yourselves. I have stayed indoors for many months now, and this is the most I have kept myself away from meeting people, traveling, and shooting videos. But I think I can step out to do one thing that I love the most: traveling. I think adapting to the safety measures like washing hands, wearing masks, and maintaining proper social distancing, we can lead ourselves into the future by welcoming the new normal way of living life.
Wonderful Indonesia, and what a wonderful video by the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia.
Distinguished delegates, next there will be an introduction of the Board of Secretary and the Board of Directors of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021. And this session will be led by our beautiful Secretary General, Ms. Daria Kiseleva.
To Ms. Daria Kiseleva, you may have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ari and Melinda. So, by the way, you can call me Daria, okay? No need to tell my family name every time. So, I guess I will have the honor to present you the Board of Directors, correct? All right, perfect. So waiting for the next slide. Okay, so we are starting with the UNICEF committee, which will be discussing the topic of empowering refugee children through technology. And that committee will be moderated by our amazing chairs. So there will be Sophie Shara from Germany, which will be the chair of UNICEF. We'll have the co-chair, Muhammad Ganesh Arkana, and the wonderful rapporteur, Sandra Novita from Indonesia as well. For the UNESCO committee, which will be discussing the freedom of press and journalism, we'll have as the head chair, Ms. Felicia Christabel from Indonesia, as a co-chair, Apostolos Simeonidis from Greece, and the rapporteur will be Nika Gerona from the Philippines. For the World Health Organization, which will be discussing the very important topic of the impact of air pollution on public health, we will have as the head chair, Mr. Jonas Simoronkir. As the co-chair, we'll have Eva Nasrola, and as the rapporteur, Ms. Cynthia Wardani Jayaputra will be our board of directors. For the SOCOM committee, which this year will be discussing the protection of rights for privacy in the digital era, we will have as the head chair, Mr. Nicola Lukic from Bosnia. The co-chair will be Nigel Lee from Singapore. And we will also have as the rapporteur, Ms. Tanya Lami Chane. For the spec poll committee, which will be addressing the topic of political participation of indigenous people, we will have as the head chair, Mr. Valerio from Switzerland. As a co-chair, we'll have Irish Castillo from the Philippines, of course, and as the rapporteur, we will have Mr. Algifari Alpha, from Indonesia as well. Then for our Interpol committee, which will be tackling the very pressing issue of bioterrorism, we will also have 3 amazing members of the board of directors. So as the head chair, we will have Ms. Anna Golikova from Russia. As the co-chair, Mr. Shreyash Dubey from India. And as the rapporteur, Mr. Nicholas Spilker from Germany. Moving on with DISEC, DISEC that will be tackling the topic of nuclear proliferation, which is always an interesting topic to address. We will have as the head chair, Mr. Tam Jin Ren. We'll have as the co-chair, Mr. Aryan Singh. And as the rapporteur, we will be having Ms. Nadia Ahmed. For UNEP, which will be tackling the topic on the rise of the world global temperatures, we'll also have 3 amazing boards of directors. We will have as the head chair, Mr. Difan from Indonesia. As the co-chair, we'll have Ms. Bianca from the Philippines. And as the rapporteur, we will have Mr. Ardian from Indonesia as well. For UNDP, which will address the disproportionate impact of poverty on women during COVID, we will have as the head chair, Ms. Theresia from Indonesia, right? As co-chair, we'll have Mr. Andre from Mexico, and the rapporteur will be Lady J from Indonesia as well. And finally, for the UNWTO, the UN World Trade Organization, which will be tackling the very interesting topic of how to boost the tourism sector for recovery after the COVID, we will have as the head chair, Ms. Salwa Shafira from Indonesia. As the co-chair, of course, we'll have Madhav from India. And as the rapporteur, we'll have Mr. Aziz from Indonesia as well. All right, so that was all for the presentation of the board of directors. I hope you delegates have already talked to your chairs, and I wish you a very, very nice conference with them in your respective committees.
Thank you, Ms. Daria Kizileva, for your time to introduce all the board of directors and board of secretary of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021.
Distinguished delegates, before we close the opening ceremony, please do pay attention of the information that we are going to inform. That's about technical information of the Asia Youth International MUN Virtual Conference. The first one is about Zoom Meeting application. First, don't forget to install Zoom Meeting application on your laptop, personal computer, or smartphone.
The second one, the technical information about how to join the meeting have been mentioned on your guidebook.
There will be 10 meeting rooms with 10 different links for each consoles. You are not allowed to share the link to another delegates from the other console.
about the username and virtual background. So the first one is, please use the username format given by the committee during the committee session. The format is council_country. So the example is UNDP_Germany.
The second one is you are required to use the official virtual background provided by the committee during the committee session.
Next, the link to access the virtual background has been mentioned on your guidebook.
The technical instructions about how to change username and virtual background has been mentioned on your guidebook.
Lastly, about the important notes. The first one is, all delegates must obey the rules and regulations applied by the Committee of the Asia Youth International MUN Virtual Conference.
All delegates must respect time, respect system, and respect people.
All delegates must turn on the camera on during the session. In case you have a technical issues, can be informed to the committee officer.
Please highly note the time zone differences between the time zone applied by the committee and your own time zone.
Being late when joining the opening and closing ceremony will make you lose the opportunity to take part in the session.
Being late when joining the committee session will make you miss the MUN 101 and roll call.
And during the session, you will have time to speak when the host or admin or chair and co-chair allow you to speak.
Thank you so much. Kindly read the information mentioned on the guidebook carefully. Good luck, delegates. Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the end of the opening ceremony of the Asia Youth International Model United Nations Virtual Conference 2021. On behalf of the host and the committee, once again, we would like to give our deepest appreciation to you all for your kind support and participation.
Also, we would like to thank to the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy of the Republic of Indonesia for your biggest support for this event.
Dear all delegates, before you close your screen right now, we are going to take a picture together.
So, give your best smile and pose, then kindly screenshot by your own laptop and don't forget to upload it to your social media and tag us at International MUN. Once again, Ari, at International MUN.
So let's start it.
All right.
For the first pose.
Formal pose maybe.
All right, formal pose.
All right.
Give your best smile, delegates.
3, 2, 1. All right. What's next, Ari?
All right, your own style.
Okay.
Your free pose.
Like this? All right, 3, 2, 1.
Another your best pose.
Last pose maybe, yeah? All right.
That's very wonderful of this conference tonight, delegates.
Yes. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Have a good day. Good luck for the committee session tomorrow.
Good evening, and see you on the closing ceremony.
Have a great night. Have a good day.